If you didn't see our intro here at Stan's Garden Center to our podcasting here, one of the things we talked about was Alyssa taking my job. She took my job a number of years ago. How many years ago did you take my job? Quite a few.
Yeah, 7 years ago.
7 years ago, she took my job from me. And one of the jobs that I had, if not the primary job that I had, was a lot to do with numbers. And she is the master of numbers. Plus, she has a memory. I don't have a memory anymore. It left about, 10 years ago. Right about the time you took my job is when I lost my memory. And one of the things that we really watch a lot is how much of what we're growing and how many are going into hanging baskets and smaller pots. It's a very complex number issue. So this podcast is going to be a lot of in the wheelhouse, so to speak, of Alyssa. But there's two ways that we pretty much produce plant material, is either by seed or by cutting. That's the only real two ways of reproduction or manufacturing plants, if you will, in our industry. So we're in a propagation house right now that turns little tiny snips into viable plants that we can sell. So that's the propagation side of stuff. And this is really predominantly Alyssa's job. So give us a little bit on how this occurs, how this house, and why there's so many empty benches in here.
So we actually just cleared a lot of the trays out of here to make room for more plants, so calm down.
All right.
I have about 20,000 more unrooted cuttings, little tips of plants coming in next week. So right now we're on week 10, next week will be week 11. I have, like I said, about 20,000 of little teeny tiny tips of plants coming in that are gonna go into trays similar to these that sit in here for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks before they come out of here and adjust for a couple more weeks, and then they go into larger pots. And
Wait a
then
minute,
we have...
Week 10? What do you mean week 10?
We're on week 10.
We're on week 10?
Yeah.
So we just number the weeks?
Yeah. We go by week numbers. That's how all of our scheduling is done, from cuttings to sowing. Sowing referring to the seeds that we grow. That's often what you find in our 3-packs, our 1203, our flat material, like your begonias or all your vegetables. All that stuff is seed driven. A lot of this material goes into the 4.5-inch material in the greenhouse, the annuals. In case you didn't know.
All right, I forgot.
Yeah, green side up.
So one thing you're going to see that Alyssa's talking about is these small trays. These are 84 cells, so there's 84 plants in an individual cell. And we're going to walk over to another greenhouse because this Propagation 1 house here is utilized a lot for these smaller cells. It's a mix of all kinds of different plants, a little bit of a lot of different things. The other way that you'll find a lot of propagation done is our geraniums. Geraniums are able to be rooted directly into the pot that they're going to be sold in. So they don't have to be controlled in a little tiny cell like this. They will tolerate, and they'll root fast enough and aggressive enough that we can skip that step, if you will. So the next house, and actually the next 3 houses, we have 4 propagation houses. The next house is actually direct stick geraniums that will root right in their pot. So let's take a walk over there.
All right, let's go to prop house number 2.
So Alyssa, you have your trusty book, or you probably remember right off the cuff. What week was this stuck, so to speak? We use the lingo stuck. The cuttings were stuck into the soil. They came in, shipped in bags and cardboard boxes.
Yep.
And they come right to our door. They're next day aired right from their origin.
Yep.
And they come in cardboard boxes and packed 100 in a pack. Mm-hmm. What week did these ones get stuck?
These ones came week 7, so 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, and you'll see, we're going to get to how this happens in a second, but now if I pull these up, in 3 weeks, you had this little cutting that had no roots, and last podcast, we talked about the soil or the substrate that we're growing in, having all these little white fibers. You'll see that they are nice and fluffy, so they're not all sunk down, so there's lots of air in there. So between the air and the moisture, you get this cutting that came in a plastic bag, and now it has roots. Mm-hmm. So in your trusty little book, how many plants do you have in this individual house?
In this house, there's almost 14,000.
So 14,000 cuttings. And you do that 3 times?
3 times.
3 times. So this is prop 2, prop 3, and prop 4 are subsequent stickings. And we can walk to prop 3 in a minute to see the one that was just stuck. That was stuck this week,
this
right?
week, yep. Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk a little bit about how that happens. on the facility side of things. So every year, like our motto here is always something growing on. And there literally is something always growing on because we're always building another greenhouse, which I've told the staff, I think 3 years ago, I'm done building greenhouses. We're building another one right now. The facility itself is all controlled by an environment control that is a Canadian company called Damatex, that it takes all the environment, like the sun just kind of got brighter, and we use something called joules, and the measurement of how much time it takes to absorb a certain amount of energy is the measurement of joules. So joules of light, if it was a cloudy day or a rainy, snowy day, the addition of joules would be very long. So it might take an hour to get 1,000 joules or 500 joules, whatever the computer's set at. Now the sun comes out, it's sunny, blue skies here, even though we rarely get that in Erie, so the joules will click off pretty quickly. So it might take 15, 20 minutes to get 1,000 joules. So if you're following my math, I should have let her explain this. The math adds up. That's how much sun is hitting that leaf. So therefore the computer says, ooh, we get 1,000 joules, spray the leaf. So the computer will mist, because it's all an electronic misting system. It's all run through a 24-volt transformer that turns on the valves, much like an irrigation system that you'll see around a Disney resort, or you might have one at your house, or a lot down south and out west where there's dry zones. If you want to grow green grass, you'll see irrigation systems that all run on electronic valves like that and timers. So all of that is hooked to a computer, hooked to our weather station, that gives us the ability to spray the leaf according to how the weather is. Kind of cool. Once it gets a certain amount of time, we can also program the computer. The Damatex says, okay, they've had enough time. Obviously now you can see that we have roots on these. It'll start to wean them off of water, and it'll actually start to wean them off of temperature. We keep them about 72 when we start them, and a lot of mist. We have a program that says, what's it called? Early stuck?
Fresh stuck.
Fresh stuck. Fresh stuck would be a lot of water early, like the first 3-4 days, and then it will taper off from that as well. So we'll actually start to cool the house as well, because the Damatex computer also controls horizontal airflow. We'll open inlets here, open up the fans, and it'll keep the leaf dry. One of the reasons that we kind of control the amount of moisture is geraniums do not like wet tops after they have roots. They like to have dry tops and moist bottoms. So let's go take a look at the ones that you guys just stuck.
Okay, let's head over to prop house number 3.
Go ahead.
So these geraniums were just stuck this week. They all came in on Tuesday. Most of them come in from Mexico, and they usually come overnight. But they come just like this little top. We stick them in a white powder. It's a rooting powder that helps grow the roots a little bit faster. So that's what you see on there. And then we just stick them in that powder and stick them right into the soil, stick the tag in, and then they're ready to go. After a few weeks, they come out of here and they end up going into a cooler house, into troughs where they get bottom watered, because like Josh said, they don't like water on their leaves. So they only get watered from the bottom. And then even in retail, when we take them down to the store, we put them in a certain tray so they can get watered from the bottom. And
computer's kicking on, you
see. Gonna get wet because they're on fresh sticks. So that means the joules are at their time where they need to moisten the leaves.
It adds up really quick on fresh stick. We add more moisture when they have no roots to keep them from what we call flagging. Flagging is when the flag waves, you'll get the wave going. When they start to curl like this, they're under stress. There we go. Here we are. Joules hit and we're wet. So the mist this frequent helps them prevent from flagging until they start to grow roots. Literally within 7 days, they'll start to put out a root hair because of that IBA talc, that indobutyric acid that makes that green cell turn into a root cell. So that's basically all that does. The plant can naturally create indobutyric acid when it's cut and stuck underground like that, but we add a little bit to kind of supercharge it, make more roots faster. So that's what that rooting hormone, everybody calls it a hormone, like it would be a medical term, but it's actually an acid that switches over green photosynthetic cells over to a root cell and makes it make more roots faster. So you got to physically see how the joules click off, how we root the geraniums direct. One thing I want to touch base on real quick is when we produce this many plants and they come in, like Alyssa said, this batch comes in from Mexico, each tag is actually a license to do that. So there is a patent. Someone owns the rights to this, just like music. So when you buy a cutting, you also buy the tag, the actual picture tag, so you can mark it. But on the back, if you read the fine print, it's going to tell you it's illegal to take vegetative cuttings off of that plant without paying a royalty. So every time we get the cutting in from Mexico, we paid for the actual plant. So the effort to physically cut it, bag it, number it, ship it to us, the freight, and we also pay the royalties, just like downloading music, and you had to pay the artist. There's someone that owns the patent, so that adds up. So the input cost to getting each one planted here has a multifaceted level to it. Almost everything you buy now that's desirable, whether it's petunias, geraniums, calabricoa, or the million bells, the little tiny petunias, is all patented. There's royalties on every single one. Before we close out this episode, because we're going to go talk about seeds, then we're going to talk a little bit about water input. I want to show you the crazy computer that we were talking about that does all this water and everything. It's just, I don't know what you want to call it, kind of a mishmash of electronics. So this is how everything controls. So each prop house, prop 1, prop 2, prop 3, prop 4, all has its own cooling, its own irrigation, and then one controls all the heat. So you flip one of them switches, that vent's going to open. If you flip one of the switches on the heat's going to turn on. It all goes back to our weather station. It all goes back to what I always joke that it's the only thing, Liz included, that completely listens to what I tell it to do around here. So this
That's
is
very true.
This is the computer that controls all that, and you'll find these workstations tied to all the different zones. So stay tuned, like our channel, watch our channel. We are going to talk about seeds next, and we're going to talk about the water that's actually coming, the lifeblood of everything, water and nutrition that's carried through every single greenhouse. So stay tuned.